Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. Today we are continuing our series on the Sefirot. And as usual, as we wait for people to come on, we're going to share some of our music with you. So this song comes from, the CD is called Praise. And I did this with all the great musicians, but it was very much Ephraim and myself. Some of the songs on this CD are Ephraim's songs, some are mine. This is one of the shorter songs. And the verse is from the last Psalm, 150th Psalm, and the last verse of the Psalms. Call on the I don't know what just happened right there, but okay. So, the last verse is Kol Neshama Tehalel Ka Hallelujah. The Ka is for the name of Hashem. The breath of every living thing shall praise you. So these are the words of the song, and I hope you will enjoy it. Here we go.
Hallelujah.
Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Okay, so we're now starting. I do have to mention that was Tamar Atias on flute. I've mentioned like what a master she is, and that was Tamar Atias on flute. Okay, so tonight the idea is last week we began looking at the Sefirot more from a personal point of view. As we've mentioned in almost every class, the Sefirot can be related to and seen as expressing, as it were, attributes of God or God's light and energy, and then how that is manifest in the physical material world, and also on the level of souls. We've talked about this: worlds, souls, and divinity. And the Sefirot relate on all three levels. And last week we began to look at the Sefirot very much from the soul level, the psychological makeup, because as we said from the very beginning, the Sefirot are the DNA of creation, and they manifest on every level of reality and in the soul. So today we're going to look at a number of different ways that we can relate to the Sefirot and to internalize them and to understand them. So first we're going to look at a chart. There we go. 1 second. Okay, so here we begin. We're only interested in the correspondence on this page between the Sefirot and sometimes they're called the 7 shepherds. Of course, you have the 3 patriarchs, along with Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. And sometimes they're referred to as the Ushpizim. As we will see at the end of this class, we're going to concentrate very, very much on how to use the Sefirot as a focus for shaking lulav. So here what we're seeing is the typical classical traditional correspondences between the Sefirot and these 7 personalities. It's been mentioned that in the Zohar basically is a commentary on the 5 books of Moses, of the Chumash. There are other parts that are inserted in there, but it's mostly about the Chumash. And so when it's talking about the different stories of Avram and Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David, or the Imahot, Rachel and Leah, Sarah and Rivka, they're all connected to Sefirot. And so there's a very, very important way, and I'm introducing this here because we're going to see it in all the different things we're showing tonight, that Abraham is considered what's called the Merkava, or the chariot of Chesed. He's the channel. He's an archetypal figure, and he represents Chesed. Yitzchak is the Merkava of Gevura, and all that entails, and so on with all of them. Each one of them is understood in the Kabbalistic tradition as not just as a person that lived at a certain time and did certain things, but their whole being and all the stories about them represent archetypal energies, and especially the Sefirot. So I'm going to take this off the screen, but so if anyone wants to mark it down, we put it up on the WhatsApp. So people could could see it before the class, but just very quickly, Avraham is always associated with Chesed, Yitzchak with Gevura, and I'll say the inner dimensions also. Avram's Chesed and love. Yitzchak is Gevura and Yira, awe and fear. Yaakov is Tiferet and Rachamim, compassion. Moshe is Netzach and Bitachon, which means security, self-assurance. Aaron is Hod, which means glory, acknowledgement, praise, thanks, and the inner dimension of Tamimut, of sincerity. Yosef is the tzaddik, he is Yesod, the foundation, and the inner dimension is Emet, truth. And David is Malchut, kingship, and the inner dimension of Shiflut, of existential lowliness. So now we're going to see what we're going to do with that. Okay, so what we're going to start with is the Sefirot HaOmer. Of all of the usages of the Sefirot on a personal level, a psychological level, there's nothing like Sefirot HaOmer. It's a 49-day period where we're counting 49 days between Pesach and Shavuos. And as is traditional, each day when we count, we make a combination of the Sefirot. So here, for 7 weeks during the year, the main focus of our kavana, of our intentions, of the guide to the spiritual work that we could be doing during these 7 weeks is dependent on our knowledge of the Sefirot and our willingness to use it. We're told that in Egypt, we had reached the 49th level of impurity. And the goal is to reach the 49th level of purity right before receiving the Torah on Shavuos at Sinai. So every day we're exchanging symbolically a level of impurity for a level of purity. And what this means in practical terms is what's called tikkun hamidot, of rectifying our attributes, our personality, our characters, our characteristics. And so each day of the Omer, the first week will be all chesed. The second week is the week of Gevura. The third week is the week of Tiferet. The fourth week of Netzach, fifth week of Hod, sixth week of Yesod, and seventh week of Malchut. But since there's 7 days in each week, so we do the most important exercise of inter-inclusion that we do all year is the first day of the Omer is Chesed Sheba Chesed, meaning the aspect of Chesed within Chesed, a double portion of Chesed. The second day is Gevura Sheba Chesed. The third day is Tiferet Sheba Chesed, and onwards, all 49 days. Then you go to the week of Gevura. So then we start with Chesed Sheba Gevura, Gevura Sheba Gevura, Tiferet Sheba Gevura. And we go through the 49 days like this. Now, if we don't know anything about the Sefirot, then we have no idea what to do with saying that. We could say it, but what does it mean? And so that is what we're going to go over a little bit tonight. We cannot devote a whole class to go through all 49 days. I will mention there are a number of books about Sefirot Omer. And for those who are interested, this is my book on Sefirot Omer, the significance of the days between Pesach and Shavuot. And if you see the gray part of the book, so we go through literally every single day of the Omer. And we discuss the different aspects of these Sefirot. And most important, how to take advantage of it, how to actually do spiritual work day by day according to the Sefirot. So what I'm going to do is I've picked almost randomly, I'm going to take one example from each of the weeks of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, etc. And I'm going to read to you what I've written. And then what most important is what we can do with it. And the way I do it is that at the bottom of each page, after I give over a spiritual meditation for the day, and it's really like a guided meditation that one could read it and then sit for a few minutes and actually really think about it. But here's the most classic example of taking the Sefirot, which are usually thought of being very mystical, and bringing it down to the most practical level of fixing who we are. So at the end, I pose questions for the day. And by asking ourselves these questions, that gives us the clue of what we could be thinking about and working on. So I'm going to go through 7 examples. I will mention also, and that's why I started with the correspondence of the 7 Sefirot to the 7 personalities, Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David, is because what I've done is I took different stories from the Chumash, and I show how this story is a reflection of the combination of Sefirot for that day. Again, in the forum that we're doing this right now, we could only do a few examples. So I'm going to start with Chesed of Chesed, meaning the first day of counting the Omer. So so we count, this is the first day of the Omer, and we say this is the aspect of Chesed Sheba Chesed. Now what do we do with it? So I'm just going to read what I've written. We begin counting the Omer on the evening following the first day of Pesach. The glow of the Pesach Seder is still fresh and tangible as God's redeeming light and love, remember love is the inner aspect of Chesed, permeate our minds and our souls as we begin the 49-day process of creating proper vessels to receive the Torah, which Hashem will lovingly reveal once again on Shavuos, the culmination of our 7-week journey. Today is an auspicious time to both contemplate and deeply feel the many kindnesses manifest in our lives, coming from both God and others in our lives. By letting love into our hearts, we expand our ability to not only give, remember Chesed is about giving, but to receive love as well. Chesed of Chesed represents a level of love that is unconditional. Despite the fact that there are natural highs and lows in any relationship, unconditional love is constant and cannot be severed. This love is encapsulated by the covenant God made with Abraham and the Jewish people. Acts of loving kindness, along with divine service and Torah, constitute the 3 pillars on which the world stands. So now, what are the questions we can ask ourselves to get the most out of Chesed Sheba Chesed? Now, the ones I've written are not exclusive. They're what came to me, but everyone can pose their own questions in order to make a framework of how we can really delve into Chesed Sheba Chesed, love of love, giving of giving. So these are the questions I came up with. Do I sufficiently appreciate what others do for me? Do I take the time to express my thanks? Do I give enough of myself to others? When I give to others, is it in expectation of reward and recognition? In other words, why am I giving? Is my love of God and God's love of me authentically experienced or merely a vague concept? What new acts of kindness can I incorporate into my life on an ongoing basis? What can I do on a practical level to show more appreciation for those closest to me? So these are examples. Now, if someone would take even 5 minutes to focus on a relationship that I have that is not going well, or a feeling that I have inside myself that I'm a little bit too stingy with my money or my time, or I'm very aware that I have a block of giving because I feel too vulnerable. So these are just examples of what we could be thinking about to draw chesed into our lives and really let it be a power that can change us. One of the verses that I bring are chesed kel kol hayom. It's in Psalms 52, verse 3. The kindnesses of God are all the day. Constant kindness. This is chesed sheba chesed. And when it comes to Avraham, because Avraham is the Merkava, the chariot of chesed. So the verse is Ela toldot hashemayim v'aretz behi baram b'yom asot Hashem Elokim eretz v'shemayim. These are the generations of heaven and earth in their creation. And the rabbis teach us the letters of Bihi Baram in their creation, if you permute them, spell Be Avraham. In other words, Chesed is the channel through which God is creating the world, and Avram represents this channel. Bihi Baram, don't read it Bihi Baram, read it Be Avraham. So this is our example of Chesed Sheba Chesed. Now we're going to go to Gevura Sheba Gevura. We just did Chesed Sheba Chesed. Here's Gevura Sheba Gevura. The other days we'll do combinations of different Sefirot. So this is what I wrote for Gevura Sheba Gevura in the second week. Gevura of Gevura is an ideal time to harness strength and commitment to accomplish those goals that we have set for ourselves, whether in the practical world of action or in the more inner, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual realms. It is a time to set priorities, create orderly strategies, and enact disciplined behavior. Because remember, Gevura is all about setting borders, being orderly, having discipline. Nothing stands in the way of will. And perhaps no day of the Omer is more attuned to this possibility. Gevura Sheba Gevura, might Sheba might, Yira Sheba Yira. It is also a day to make sure that the positive aspects of Gevura do not descend into undue strictness with oneself or others, as well as harshness, whether in thought, speech, or action. It is likewise an opportunity to confront our fears, because remember the inner dimension of Gevura is Yira, which is fear and awe, and to contemplate practical methods to overcome them. So what are the questions of the day? I didn't actually even read the whole thing, just because of time. But what are the questions of the day for Gevura Sheba Gevura? Am I an orderly, disciplined, and productive person? And this is a golden opportunity to look at how we operate in this world. Do I need more discipline? Maybe I'm over-disciplined and I don't leave room for creativity to flow through me. Am I too judgmental of myself and others? Very important question. This is a day to really contemplate that. Do I judge myself too harshly? And if I do, what can I do about it? Am I willing to be firm and stand up for my beliefs? Gevura. How can I practically overcome my fears? Do I feel awe of God? Remember, yira means fear, but also awe. Do I feel awe in response to the immensity and intricate detail of God's creation? Do I really feel awe of God? Awe of the creation? So one of the verses that I chose is from Pirkei Avot. Eza Gibor, who is the strong one? Gibor from Gevura. Hakoveshet Yitzro, the one who overcomes their inclination, that they can rule over their lower nature. So here's an example of Gevura, Sheba Gevura. The next one is going to be a combination. And I picked, the third week is Tiferet, and I picked Yesod of Tiferet. If you remember, Yesod is right under Tiferet. So they have a very deep connection intrinsically. So let's see what we said for this. The inner dynamic of Yesod, which is truth, is situated immediately below Tiferet and is tasked with creating a strong foundation upon which true balance and harmony can stand. Remember, Tiferet is all about harmony and mediating opposites and making, blending ideas. The question is, though, do I have a foundation for that? Or is it all just very flighty? As much as we want to be inclusive and judge others favorably, the reality of the world sometimes forces us to be true to our convictions and make choices. Even then, in almost all cases, we can approach differences of opinion and lifestyle with a sense of calmness and exhibit good manners. Therefore, this day of the Omer, Yesod of Tiferet, is conducive to evaluating our ability to be true to our convictions. Remember, the inner aspect of Yesod is truth, while at the same time balancing a wide spectrum of opinions and ideas, always searching for the middle path of peace and harmony. In other words, can we have a strong foundation and yet be open to hearing what other people have to say? In cases of disagreement between individuals, Jewish law advocates compromise and reconciliation whenever possible. So what are the questions we can ask of Yesod of Tiferet? Do I have a set of truths upon which I base my life? Do I make a foundation of my life based on what my belief system is, what I believe is true? Am I open to others' opinions and willing to change my own when necessary? Is my sense of balance and harmony, Tiferet, just a way of making, just a way out of making principled decisions? In other words, the downside of Tiferet is I can hear everyone's side, and therefore I can't really take a stand about anything because I hear what everyone is saying. Sometimes that works, and other times we have to make decisions, and we have to base it on what we believe is true and the foundations of our lives. Do I sometimes let compassion overwhelm truth or allow a rigid adherence to a limited version of truth to undermine a chance to make peace? Remember, the inner dimension of Tiferet is compassion, and the inner dimension of Yesod is truth. Well, sometimes truth and compassion don't necessarily meet easily. And so each person has to kind of figure out what is appropriate. The week of Netzach. Netzach means victory, and the inner aspect of Netzach is bitachon, is trust, self-worth, self-assurity. So let's see what we could say about this. So Netzach and Hod are called the two legs. They're towards the bottom of the Sefirot. The Netzach is called the right leg. Although Chesed, which is on the right side of the Sefirot, and Gevura, which is on the left, are often thought of as opposites. Netzach and Hod, which are also on opposite sides of the Sefirot, are considered essentially complementary, and in fact, sometimes are even counted as one Sefirah. Just like we need both legs to walk, Netzach is referred to as the right leg, and Hod is the left leg. Here we're going to do the combination of Hod and Netzach. So Netzach, I'm going to go back. Just like we need both legs to walk, Netzach is referred to as the right leg, the one that gets us off to a good start, while Hod is considered the left leg, which ensures a sincere commitment to ongoing progress. Hod of Netzach, therefore, affords us the opportunity to push forward, ever aware of the importance of sincerity and acknowledging others while we seek to fill our goals. Again, acknowledgement is the outside meaning of Hod, and sincerity is the inside. Now, who are the two personalities that represent Netzach and Hod? Netzach is Moshe, and Hod is Aharon. And if you remember, last week, we played Ephraim's song, and we discussed, and I put it also in the WhatsApp, the idea of Hine Matov U'ma Na'im Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, how good and how pleasant it is when brothers dwell together. And it's brought down. Who are the brothers in this verse? Moshe and Aaron. That they're synced together. They're like the right leg and the left leg. And each one needs each other. How many times? That we'll get to in the question. So what are the questions of the day for Hod of Netzach? Do I have the tendency to start a project with great enthusiasm only to lose steam along the way? So that would mean that I'm fixated on Netzach, but I haven't developed Hod. I haven't developed the ability to carry on what I start. If yes, if I lose steam along the way, what can I do to change that reality? A very deep look at ourselves, and if this is my pattern, how can I change it? Do I trust my intuition? Are my intuitions usually correct? How can I continue to refine my sense of intuition and harness it to productive action? So these are just great questions for what's called tikkun amidot. We're being able to fix ourselves. So because of time, I think I'm going to stop there because we're not at Sefirot Omer yet, and everyone has a chance to actually purchase this book, or there are many other books about the Sefirot, some better, some less, and you could always go online and just Google about Sefirot Omer and get different ideas from the different days. Many people make videos. So I brought all of this because this is such an important example of taking the Sefirot and using it as a mirror to look at ourselves, to fix ourselves, to improve ourselves. So here we're taking the mystical, mysterious Sefirot that when they're connected to God's light and energy seem so ethereal, but here we're bringing it down. And really, this is one of the goals of Chassidut. Chassidut is so much based on Kabbalah, and it takes the ideas of Kabbalah and then transforms them and translates them into ideas that we can understand. Okay, so now we're going to go on to another idea. And here, one second. One second. Okay, here we go. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. This first part I'm going to do in short, and that is, this is a meditation that Rav Ginsburg wrote an entire book called Living in Divine Space. I believe some of the people who are watching have this book, Living in Divine Space. And it's based, if you look in the left column, called Constant Mitzvah. This is based on a teaching from the Rambam on 6 constant mitzvah that apply to every person at every time in every circumstance. And all of them are mental. They are mitzvot that we do with our mind or our heart. They could also include physical actions, but they're basically mental. So very quickly, obviously, Rav Ginsburg wrote an entire book on this chart. So we're not doing that. I'm doing this to connect it to the Sefirot. So the 6 mitzvot are belief in the existence of God. This is the first of the 10 commandments. I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of Egypt. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Belief in the existence of God and in divine providence. The second of the 6 constant mitzvot is not believing in other gods. This is the second of the 10 commandments. Lo yelecha. You should not have any other gods before me. The third one is belief that God is one. This is the Shema. Now, this is connected, obviously, to belief in the existence of God, but the unity of God is a further development. We can believe that there's one God, but then when we look at the world, we see it as like fractured. We don't see the oneness that is connecting everything. The Shema gives us that belief in the absolute unity of God and creation. Then we have the love of God. This is the first verse in the passage that follows the Shema. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your might, or all of your means. Then we have the fear or awe of God. This is in the book of Devarim, where God, the Torah asks, what does God require of you other than to fear and have awe of him? And the last one is not straying after negative thoughts. This is the third passage of the Shema. Lo taturu, don't go after your heart and your eyes that you stray after. So these are the 6 constant mitzvot. Like I said, there's a whole book that will explain why it's connected to these directions and why it's connected to these personalities. But the main thing that I want to get to is their connection to the Sefirot. Now you'll notice at the bottom, there's one more. And this, Rav Ginsburg explains from a discussion in the Gemara, where one of the sages said, would it be that everyone could pray all the day long? So what that means is that this is a mitzvah that wants or anticipates to be constant. And this is the middle, because the whole idea of living in a divine space is to envision a cube, and each one of these directions is a plane of the cube. So above is the mitzvah of belief in the existence of God, and below is not believing in other gods. Before me is the unity of God. To my right is love of God. To the left is the fear of God. And behind me is not straying after negative thoughts. So I'm in the middle. The person who's meditating is the middle, and they're surrounded by divine space. They're surrounded by these mitzvot. So each one of these mitzvot is connected to one of the Sefirot. So very, very quickly, why is belief in God connected to Netzach? Is because, first of all, because God is eternal. One of the meanings of Netzach is eternal. And that is one of the attributes or definitions of an infinite God is God is everlasting. And it's connected to above because Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai in order to bring down the tablets that say, I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of Egypt. Hod, now you'll see these are not in the usual order. I'll explain that afterwards. Hod is connected to not believing in other gods. This is connected to Aaron because he was unwittingly part of making the golden calf. And that's the opposite of not believing in other gods. Of course, Aaron didn't believe in other gods, but he was, in trying to stall the people, somehow he became implicated in actually making it. And this is below because this kind of belief brings us down. This brings us way down when we put our trust in anything but God. Belief that God is one is in front of us because that's our perspective of the world, of seeing the world and its oneness. And this is connected to Tiferet, because remember, Tiferet is all about harmony and seeing the oneness in creation. The next two are very obvious, that the love of God is connected to Chesed. Love is the inner dimension of Chesed. And fear and awe of God is the inner dimension of Gevura. Not straying after negative thoughts is connected to Yesod and Yosef. Of course, we didn't mention that Avram is always connected to Chesed and Yitzhak to Gevura. Yosef is always connected to Yesod, Tzaddik, Yesod Olam. The righteous are the foundations of the world. And the idea of it being behind us is symbolically, these are the energies like running after us. We're always looking over our shoulder to make sure that we're not going to get drawn into things that we shouldn't get drawn into. It also relates to the past. All the things that we might have done wrong, it could create tremendous guilt and bad feelings. And so this mitzvah is not to go after our negative thoughts. So here we see, and the final one, of course, is Malchut. And this is King David. And King David is connected to prayer because it was King David who said, Va'ani tefillah, I am prayer. Meaning prayer is not something that I do. when the sages said, would it be that we could pray all the day long? They didn't mean in a sitter in a Beit Knesset. It means that would it be that I had a prayerful consciousness at all times? I'm always talking to God, relating to God. I'm in a state of constant prayer. Prayer doesn't mean necessarily I'm asking for things. It's prayerfulness. So that is Malchut. And the inner dimension of Malchut is lowliness. Because when we're in a state of prayer, we're very aware of our finiteness, our limitations in relationship to an infinite God. So now, having said this, this is an incredible meditation. It can be done at any time. Like I said, we shared it in the WhatsApp. One doesn't have to, in the beginning, memorize this. One could print this out and do the meditation with your eyes open. Doesn't have to be with your eyes closed. And after a while, one learns this. And the idea is that, again, we're in the middle of this cube, and we've created around us a divine space. And we're in the middle of this divine space. This is an incredible meditation. I've been doing it for years. You could literally do it in 1 minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It just makes this bubble of spiritual, mystical, practical energy around us. So now, as we saw, this is not in the usual order of the 7 lower Sefirot. But if you look at here where it says sense, so this is in the order of the Sefirot. Let's look at Avraham. So Avraham is Chesed. Yitzchak is Gevura. Yaakov is Tiferet. Netzach is Moshe. Hod is Aaron. Yosef is Yesod. And David is Malchut. So the last part of our class today is we're now going to take this and relate it to shaking lulav. There is this idea in the Gemara of someone having like a favorite mitzvah. And it's considered a positive thing. It doesn't mean that one doesn't like the other mitzvah, but it's just a person's whole being resonates with a certain mitzvah. For me, one of my favorite mitzvot is sukkahs in general and shaking lulav in particular. And this meditation that we see is perfect for shaking lulav. But I want to take it beyond the idea of the constant mitzvot. This is connected. But I want to use it very much like we used the Sefirot in Sefirot to Omer. Now remember, Sukkot is coming after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are coming after the whole month of Elul. And now we get to Sukkot. So until Sukkot, in a sense, the idea is God, everything is in your hand. You've got the whole wide world in your hands. And then Sukkot comes and God says, you're right, but you should know everything is in your hands as well. And so I'm giving you the mitzvah of the 4 species, arba minim, for you to take in your hands and put your year together. So how can we use this for shaking lulav? Again, this is very mystical, but very practical. So when according to the Ari, we shake according to the order of the Sefirot. Again, Chesed, then Gevura, then Tiferet, then Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. And we could do it because we know the associations with Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, etc. So when I take the lulav and we shake out, and then we bring it to the heart. So I'm going to just give a number of examples, but it's very similar to what we did with Sefirot HaOmer. So when I shake out we always orient to the east. East will always be in front of us. That's how we orient ourselves. So when I shake to the south, which is really to the right, this is Avraham and Chesed. So when I'm shaking, what I'm doing really is I'm taking all of my prayers from Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and I'm now trying to take it in my hands. The year is about to start. I want to turn my prayer into actuality, my potential into reality. So I'm going to shake out and in the direction of Chesed. And here I want to, it could be either through asking myself questions or just making statements like, God, I want to do more kindness in the world. Help me be kinder. God, I'm really having a problem with this relationship. It's someone I really love, but I'm having a hard time. Help me see through this. How can I be more loving? And then each time we're drawing God's energy into us to give us strength. God, I want to be, let's say we're doing Sefirot. And I realize about myself that I'm not always compassionate with other people. So I'm shaking, God, make me more compassionate. How can I be more compassionate? Let me feel your compassion. And I'm just giving examples here. Let's say it's Hod. So this is praise. So when I'm shaking, I could shake for 20 minutes and sing a song praising God, feeling God's glory, acknowledging God's role in my life. I hope everyone is understanding what I'm saying here. Let's say we're doing Gevura, strength. Well, let's say I'm going through something in life and I'm going to need a lot of strength to get through this. This is the time I'm shaking and I'm trying to concentrate, focus on how I can be stronger, or asking God to make me stronger, or to make Israel stronger. Let's say our thoughts are with the constant battles that Israel has to fight to survive, or Jews around the world. And so I could be shaking and asking God to make us strong, to protect us, to give us strength to fight our battles. So these are just examples. I'm going to do a few more because this is so important here. Many people take the 4 species and very quickly they shake, and we have no idea what to be thinking about. We're shaking. This gives us an incredible array of ideas to be thinking about. It's a known thing that many of the Hasidic Rabbis would quite literally shake lulav for hours. This is not an exaggeration, because they understood, it doesn't mean they were doing exactly this meditation, but they understood the auspiciousness of this mitzvah and the power that it could have. Let's say we're doing Netzach. And as we know, Israel has a lot of challenges in the world. We could put all of our energy into praying to God to make us victorious, to bring Mashiach. Getting back to Gevura, the inner inner essence of Gevurah is fear or awe. Well, we all have fears. We all have things that give us reason to stay up at night, say it like that. Here's a time that we can concentrate on those things that we fear and ask God to take those fears away or give us advice. And here we're, on one hand, we could be asking God of things, and on the other hand, we're just strengthening ourselves. Let's say I have a fear, but I know intellectually how I can get beyond this fear. So as I'm shaking, that's what I should be thinking about. And of course, each time we draw into the heart, and we could stand there for 10 seconds or 10 minutes contemplating how these Sefirot and these personalities, I'm just going to add something also. Just like in Sefirot Omer, each of these Sefirot relate to a person. So many times when I'm shaking lulav, I will think of one of the incidences in one of these personalities' lives, and I will try to connect to it in a very deep way, because in a very profound way, all of these personalities are within us. That's why they're called the chariots of these energies, because these energies are in us. And so these people are in us. So if I think of Yaakov wrestling with the angel, so when I'm shaking, I could be transforming Yaakov's battle with my own battles that I have to fight. Or Yosef, when he was able to push off the advances of the wife of Potiphar, and he was able to kovesh yitzro. He was able to overcome his passions. Well, we all have passions and desires, and we all need to overcome. So each one of these personalities is also gives us strength on what to think about while we're shaking lulav. So that is as much as we can do today. And we will continue with the Sefirot for the next couple of weeks. And I should have mentioned in the beginning, I now know that I'll add it to the WhatsApp, but this was a pre-recorded class. Something came up that would make it impossible for me to be there Tuesday Night Live, so I pre-recorded it. So obviously there won't be a question and answer period. But I do thank everyone for coming aboard, and we will see you next week. I always end with a blessing. So I want to end with the blessing that we continue to delve into the Sefirot. And the most important thing is to actually make them a part of our lives.